In the heart of the Yellow River Valley, more than 3 millennia ago, under the reign of the Shang Dynasty, the world was a place of profound uncertainty. The spirits of ancestors watched from above, the forces of nature were unpredictable deities, and the will of the high god, D, was a mystery that held the fate of the kingdom in its grasp. In the sprawling capital city, later known as the ruins of Yin, lived a group of men who served as the bridge between the mortal and the divine. They were not priests in the way we might imagine, nor were they simply scholars. They were the Oracle Bone Scribes, the architects of China's earliest known writing and the kingdom's first fortune-tellers. Their story begins not with ink and paper, but with bone and shell. The preferred medium for their sacred work came from the broad, flat shoulder blades of oxen, or even more auspiciously, the smooth, domed underbelly of a tortoise. Its plastron. These were not common materials. The tortoises, in particular, were often sent as tribute from the southern regions, their longevity imbuing their shells with a powerful spiritual resonance. The world, to the Shang, was mirrored in the tortoise's shell. Its domed back represented the canopy of heaven. Its flat belly, the earth. To hold one was to hold a microcosm of the universe. Once selected, the preparation of these sacred canvases was a long and meticulous ritual in itself. The bones and shells were carefully cleaned, scraped of any remaining flesh or sinew, and then sawed and polished. The surfaces were worked until they were as smooth as worn stone, ready to receive the cryptic messages of the spirits. But the most crucial step came next. Using a bronze tool, the scribe would painstakingly chisel or drill a series of small pits or hollows into the back of the bone or shell. They were carved in neat, ordered rows, a testament to the discipline and precision required for this sacred task. Each hollow was a gateway, a prepared wound through which the voice of the divine could speak. The process of divination was a royal monopoly, a cornerstone of the king's power. Only the Shang King, the Son of Heaven, could command these rituals and interpret their outcomes. His concerns spanned the entire spectrum of existence, from the monumental to the mundane. A typical day of divination might begin with questions of the state. The king, seated in his ceremonial hall, surrounded by these specialist scribes, would pose his query: will the northern tribes raid our borders in the coming 10-day week? The scribe would listen intently, his face a mask of concentration. The question had to be framed carefully, often as a positive and negative charge, a binary choice presented to the spirit world. It will rain, the charge might be, and its counterpart, it will not rain. The scribe would then take up a bronze poker, its tip heated in a blazing brazier until it glowed with an angry orange light. The air in the divination chamber would be thick with the smell of charcoal and the palpable tension of the moment. The fate of a harvest, the outcome of a war, the health of the queen, all hung in the balance. With a steady hand, the scribe would touch the glowing tip of the poker to one of the prepared hollows on the back of the bone. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The intense, localized heat caused the bone to expand and then crack with a sharp, distinct report, a sound the Shang people called pu. It was the sound of the spirit world breaking through into the mortal realm. The scribe would then withdraw the poker and turn the bone over. On its smooth, polished front, a new pattern had appeared, a series of fine, branching cracks radiating from the point of heat. The most prominent crack, a long vertical line, was known as the stem, and the smaller, horizontal fissures were the branches. This was the moment of truth. The king and his diviners would crowd around the bone, their eyes tracing the newfound lines. Interpreting these cracks was not guesswork, it was a learned and complex science. A form of pyromancy passed down through generations of scribes. A crack that veered to the left might be auspicious, while one that branched sharply to the right could portend disaster. The angle, length, and number of fissures all held meaning. They were a divine script, and the scribes were its sole translators. Based on their reading, a prognosis was declared: auspicious, the harvest will be bountiful, or inauspicious, the queen's illness will worsen. But the work of the scribe was far from over. In many ways, the most important part was yet to come. Once the ritual was complete and the prediction made, the scribe would take up a sharp bronze awl or a sliver of jade. With the same precision used to carve the hollows, he would now inscribe a permanent record of the event directly onto the bone itself. This was not mere record-keeping, it was a way of validating the ritual and creating a library of divine precedent. The inscription, known as an Oracle Bone Script, was a complete account. It typically began with the date, using the complex 60-day cycle of the Shang calendar. Then came the name of the diviner, who was often the king himself or a trusted scribe. Following this was the charge, the question that had been posed to the ancestors. For example, King Wu Ding asks, "Will Lady Hao's childbirth be good?" The scribe's sharp tool would meticulously carve the elegant, pictographic characters, each one a stylized representation of an object or an idea. The character for rain might be a simple sketch of lines falling from a cloud. The character for horse would be an unmistakable equine form. After the prediction was noted, the bone was carefully stored. But the story didn't end there. In a remarkable testament to their empirical mindset, the Shang scribes would often, at a later date, retrieve the bone and add a final verification. This was a note confirming what actually happened. On the 10th day, it did indeed rain. Or, Lady Hao gave birth, it was not good. It was a girl. These matter-of-fact postscripts transformed the oracle bones from tools of fortune-telling into the world's earliest historical archives. They provide a direct, unfiltered window into the anxieties, hopes, and daily realities of a world that existed over 3,000 years ago. The life of an Oracle Bone Scribe was one of immense prestige and responsibility. They were members of an educated elite, masters of the kingdom's most sacred and complex technology, writing. They were not just secretaries, they were astronomers, tracking the celestial cycles to maintain the calendar. They were genealogists, keeping meticulous records of the royal lineage to know which ancestors to appeal to for specific problems. They were historians, their inscriptions forming the bedrock of the state's memory. Their workshops would have been filled with the tools of their trade, bronze knives for carving, pots of pigment, likely red cinnabar or black soot, for highlighting the incised characters, and stacks upon stacks of prepared and inscribed bones and shells. These archives were a source of immense power. By controlling the channel of communication with the ancestors and the god D, the scribes and the king they served cemented their authority. A military campaign was not just a strategic decision, it was a divine command. Legitimized by the crack of the oracle bone, a royal decree was not the whim of a ruler, but the expressed will of the heavens. This system created a powerful feedback loop. The king's decisions were validated by the spirits, and the spirit's will was interpreted by the king and his scribes, reinforcing the absolute necessity of the monarchy. The subjects inscribed on the bones reveal a civilization grappling with the fundamental challenges of human existence. They asked about toothaches, dreams, and enemy curses. They inquired about the weather, the success of millet and wheat crops, and the proper time and form for sacrifices. They tracked military campaigns, noting the number of enemies captured and the allies who would join them. They recorded the births and deaths within the royal family. Nothing was too large or too small to be brought before the ancestors. One series of inscriptions details King Wu Ding's persistent anxiety over a toothache, asking repeatedly which ancestor was responsible for his suffering. These personal, intimate glimpses make the Shang people feel startlingly close, their concerns echoing our own across the chasm of 32 centuries. This world, centered on the ritual of the oracle bones, thrived for over 200 years at the capital of Yin. But dynasties, like all mortal things, eventually fall. Around 1046 BCE, the Shang were conquered by the Zhou. The new dynasty had its own methods of divination, primarily using yarrow stocks in the system that would later be codified in the I Ching. The Book of Changes, the practice of oracle bone pyromancy faded. The great archives of the Shang kings, containing tens of thousands of inscribed bones and shells, were left in the storage pits where they had been kept. Over time, the wooden palaces of Yin rotted away. The city was abandoned, and the earth reclaimed the site. The oracle bones, and the civilization they chronicled, were buried and forgotten. For 3,000 years, they lay silent beneath the fields of a village called Shaotun, near the modern city of Anyang. Local farmers would occasionally unearth them while plowing. Not knowing what they were, they called them dragon bones and, believing them to have medicinal properties, would grind them into powder to be sold in apothecaries as a cure for malaria and other ailments. An untold number of these invaluable historical records were consumed as medicine, their sacred inscriptions vanishing into dust. The story could have ended there. A final, tragic loss. But in 1899, a scholar and official named Wang Yurong was sick with malaria. He was prescribed a dragon bone remedy from a local pharmacy. Before the bone could be ground up, he noticed the strange, deliberate carvings on its surface. As a scholar of ancient Chinese bronzes, he immediately recognized them as a form of archaic writing, far older than any he had ever seen. He was stunned. He sent his assistants to scour the pharmacies of Beijing, buying up every piece of dragon bone they could find. This discovery sent shockwaves through the world of Chinese scholarship. It was the first physical proof of the Shang Dynasty, which many historians had, until that point, considered to be a mythical period, a legend recorded in later texts. The inscriptions on these bones confirmed the names of Shang kings and the structure of their society, matching the accounts of later historians like Sima Qian and proving that the Shang were very much real. Archaeological excavations at Anyang soon began, unearthing the foundations of the last Shang capital. They found royal tombs, bronze foundries, and most importantly, the royal archives, pits filled with thousands upon thousands of oracle bones. The life's work of the Shang scribes was brought back into the light. Scholars dedicated themselves to the monumental task of deciphering this ancient script. They discovered it was not a primitive collection of pictures, but a fully developed writing system, with over 4,000 distinct characters. It was complex, abstract, and capable of expressing sophisticated ideas. And crucially, it was the direct ancestor of the modern Chinese writing system. The character for sun, or moon, carved on a tortoise shell 3,200 years ago is recognizably related to the character used today. The Oracle Bone Scribes of the Shang Dynasty were, therefore, something far more profound than mere fortune-tellers. They were the midwives at the birth of Chinese history. In their meticulous work, they were not just seeking to know the future, they were creating a permanent present. Every time they heated a poker, interpreted a crack, and carved a character, they were solidifying the abstract concepts of time, power, and memory. They laid the foundation for a civilization-defining tradition of historiography and bureaucracy. Their elegant script, born from the need to speak with the dead, became a living tool that would unite a vast and diverse culture for millennia to come. The silent scribes of Anyang, working in the firelight of a long-vanished world, etched a story into bone that would outlast their temples, their cities, and their dynasty, a story that continues to speak to us today.